I'm Lee Crow, and I teach biology at Ruskin High School.
I'm Bethany Kelly. I teach biology at Ruskin High School.
I'm Shields, teach pre-AP biology at Ruskin High School.
I'm Sandy Lallman. I'm a special education teacher. I do the co-teaching in chemistry and biology at Ruskin.
I'm Carrie Moutre, and I teach biology at Ruskin High School.
We're here to meet to talk about what we're doing in our department to plan for our unit that we are about to begin. And we have just now ended our unit on DNA. And we have some data reports that we're looking at to help guide us. What kinds of data have you collected so far from our DNA test?
Well, I did the test first, and initially it's good. Everybody's at least hitting basic, but we're going to have a pre-test or another test tomorrow because I think when we went through and we looked at the tests and looked at what questions that we missed, what were the most missed questions, and explained a little test strategy, the kids, oh, well, I knew that. So I think retesting them at this point would be a more true show of what they know. However, when I put it into the data sheets that we do for our wall, the overall growth was good. So
this is what the data sheet looks like. This comes off of USA Test Prep.
This is the one for
from the district. Okay, this is
the school.
The data comes from USA Test Prep that we put into this kind of format to guide us on how our students are doing. Okay, all right. And have you tested as well?
I gave the test today. I have some classes that my students are still finishing, but out of my classes, my numbers are definitely kind of different. I have one class that is a reverse bell curve. I have half of them in advanced and half of them are below basic. I don't have anybody in between. So, and whereas my other ones are the typical, I have the majority of them are basic. I have a few that are below, but again, most of my students struggle with the reading. So when we're reading these tests, I have them read them first and then we go back over afterwards and work with them individually because a lot of them don't want anybody to know that they have special needs or that they have IEPs. So we go through it this way with them. So, and tomorrow and Friday, we'll be going back over them with it. The rest of the class who scored proficient or above are going to start working on an EOC game that I created.
I know we're coming up on spring break, so when we return, are there specific GLEs that they did not do well on that we know we need to reteach?
Other than our previous EOCs, when we're looking at specifically the ones for...
I'm thinking specifically about the unit on DNA. Were
DNA?
there specific GLEs on the DNA that, for example, were they struggling with base pairs? Were they struggling with mutations? Where are they having troubles?
My students had some problems with some of the mutations as far as the connection between here's a mutation, it's happening, say in like the skin cells, can that be passed on? So that particular GLE where it's making the connection of the mutation and its heritability is the one that...
So we're actually tying two units together. We're going backwards in time to previously taught ideas of
some of the
fertilization and inheritance of traits.
Yes.
Tying it together with mutations in this unit. So they're having trouble bridging the gap between two different units in this case. Okay. Anything?
Which, working on their schema for that is going to be a key thing for them to understand that it is a building block, and that's why the game that I'm going to start doing on Friday is bringing that into it, where they're going to get 6 random terms and they have to figure out how they all go together with each other. So that's going to be a great bridge to starting that off.
Have you guys all looked at the calendar that the EOC is coming up pretty close? It's about, what, I counted
30 days.
30 day countdown. 30 days. We have a countdown.
Exactly.
Ms. Loman has a countdown literally going in our room, and we started counting down. I think Ms. Matrina, you and I did that last year, didn't we?
So since it's coming so close, what are the things that we're doing right now to prepare for reviewing for the EOC? What do we have in place?
One of the things that we started doing about 4 weeks ago now with snow days, I think it was we started creating an EOC review test. And what it is every week they get an EOC packet that we created from USA Test Prep. From here, they're able to take it and they're able to see where they're at. I just created our third one. This one here is specifically with our DNA because that's our next one that was identified with Mr. Ryerson from our last EOC practice that we were struggling with, which was in this diagnostic here that we had put together where they identified everybody. This one here, I'm just literally going down each block, and that's how I've been creating those tests for us.
Okay. You've got the third review, okay. Weekly performance events. Have we thought about what we want to do right after spring break in terms of a performance event? We want to keep revisiting that because that's the second part of the EOC test.
I know one of the things is trying to get in the library for the technology to be able to use it with, and especially since you just said that they just did an eye tester update,
right,
and it wasn't working.
Okay,
so that's going to make it a little difficult.
But that's very important that we all find time to schedule our classes to get onto the computer so that they can practice the graphic manipulation with the eye tester.
I tried to schedule it today, and she said after spring break that would be available.
Okay, good.
Hopefully it'll be running then, so.
Okay. And that would be my thing. I would hate to schedule it and have it still not working right. I'd rather, especially if there's another class that could be in there practicing a constructive response or something like that for English to be practicing.
You know, I have concern about the students that are going to miss their practice time on the eye tester. I think that we need to keep good track of who was absent on the days that we take our group down. I find that my students who are scoring below basic tend to have higher absenteeism, and I want to make sure I don't lose them and not give them the same opportunity to know how to do it well before we take the test.
I think maybe it might be helpful if we can't get on, maybe to think of one or come up with one to use as plan B. Because if we can't get on, we go use the ones in our classroom before we were doing eye test, or maybe just to make one in case.
Right. Well, we have the bank and it's on My Big Campus too, that we can pull one from there.
I think we need to pull one. I think we need to go all the way from step one to the end, not just the graphing, but the whole mental processing of independent, dependent, how do I identify controls, all of that needs to be practiced. I don't think you can practice it too many times. You know, it's just, it's that important.
That was a question on that we put into the DNA test that we just took, and that was one of the most missed for my students was simply, you know, how many variables do you manipulate in A? And they were thinking two because of independent and dependent. However, there's one that you change. So we talked about that.
I know that one with my students. Where they get confused is the word manipulate.
Manipulate.
They don't know that word. That's the word where they struggle. If I say, well, which ones do you change? Then they know the word. They know it's one, but otherwise it's
I think for the performance event, it might be a good idea to put together a word bank of words that could be used because they're not everyday words.
That's true.
And I think that would help them be prepared ahead of time.
I think we have that already done in that photocopy book that we were given that had a lot of the different questions, the breakdowns for the EOC, the most tested questions and stuff.
All right.
On the back of that, when I made photocopies, it has an entire vocabulary list.
We need to take a look at the vocabulary then for performance events.
Can we put those in our EOC review? You know, we've got our questions, you know, that you pull off of the USA test prep, but maybe if there is a section we could put in for maybe like these.
I could do like a 5-question vocabulary matching just so they could.
I think maybe that would be. Do you think that would be helpful?
Yeah, I think that's a great idea.
Well, I think we need to get the words up in the room so the kids are seeing them and they go, oh, what's that? We can
make it more visual, not just a hand, on paper type thing. Okay. All right. One of the reports that we have to work with is our student diagnostic data, which breaks down the previous EOC diagnostic scores for each individual student. Have you done anything special with getting those scores back to your students?
On USA Test Prep, there is a place where you can generate all of the student scores for the tests that they have, and I kind of got all fancy with it with Excel, but it will print it in an Excel format, and then you can, I just sort them by alphabetical order, so my students are alphabetical, and it also puts it by date so they can see at the bottom of their little chart, you know, this was August, and how did they go from August to November to December and so on and so forth. And I cut these into little strips for my students and gave them, and we went over the data, and they said you should see, you know, a trend where August was the lowest and you go up from there. If you don't see that trend, you need to look at, you know, how you were preparing, you know, and we need to look at, you know, what we need to do for the folks that are more flatlined or they're going up and coming down. Because we did have a few kids that they would go up and then they'd go down and then they'd be back up again. And so we had a discussion on that, and I think that really made a difference with the students because they're all of the scores all in one place together.
Right.
And so I think that was helpful for them, you know, and you could graph it. We didn't graph it, but I think you could, you know, if you wanted that extra level.
I know that for me it's important to be able to look at it all on one page. So as they took the test each time, or when I had a new student transfer in, I've been trying to keep track of their scores. I know that it's important for me to know students who may have missed one of the diagnostics, so that you know they're needing to make sure that we have a baseline on them, so we know how they're doing. I take it you're also keeping track of that.
I do the same thing. Mine's a different type of spreadsheet than yours, though, I think a little bit. Just because mine, I also not just put the score they got, I also put the percentage, and I put an arrow specifically there. So they can look real quick, and I can look at the teacher overall for my class, and then I put my class average also for each one at the bottom.
I think when we work with the students one-on-one, we have a really valuable tool. This is the student diagnostic data that reports how they did for each of the different GLEs. And so when I am able to take a look at this, I can see students who are struggling with one particular aspect of the test that they've taken already. For me, what I've done with it so far is that I've identified those students and I've had personal conversations with them, one-on-one. Take a look at your scores. Your peers' scores seem to be, you know, quite a bit different than yours. Are there some contributing factors? We have that conversation. A lot of times it's they're racing through the questions, or they didn't feel that it was significant for them to put in their best effort, or they sat next to their friend and they were distracted. So, you know, I'm kind of trying to point out to them that their effort is really a sign of their competency and their growth and their learning, and that they should be proud of their score. All right, so that's one way I use this. The other way I can use the student diagnostic is as I want to set up groups, like pairs. I can choose students who are very successful in an area and pair them with a student who really needs to be guided, all right? And I wanted to share with you that story real quick. Shanice was doing this assignment, and she was worried that she wasn't doing it right, and she was doing a fine job. So I asked a second student to come over, and she got upset that she thought the second student was going to reteach her what she was doing well. And I said, no, today's your day. You need to teach this student how you're doing it, and you're doing it well. And you could just see, you know, this incredible glow on her face that she was able to be successful and teach someone else. So I think that pair idea does work on helping bring up those students who need to be brought up.
The other thing, since you mentioned time, on the report from USA Test Prep, you can get an elapsed time on there, and that was something that I addressed with my students, that you know, there's a length of how many questions. If there's 35 questions and it only took you 18 minutes to get through the test, that tells me that you didn't spend a lot of time on the questions, and we need to take a look at them. And I told them you should have a goal of being with each question at least a minute. So I should be seeing about 35 minutes for 35 questions for it. So that was a good sign of effort as well, and they could see it right next to their score and see that direct correlation between the two.
And we've shared that with our students as well, and it's made them pause and take their time. So.
One of the other things I did with mine is I went through and highlighted some of my kiddos who have a really high number of absenteeisms, or my ones who are my lower level readers, just so I can make sure I'm giving them extra attention, more one-on-one, and my ones who are absent be able to figure out what it is that's going on, to be able to be there for them if they're going to be out for a certain amount of time, to give them the work so they're really not falling behind.
One thing I think is really awesome is as we've had these conversations with kids, and as we're showing them their scores, and as we're putting them up, and we're talking so much, it's awesome for me as the teacher to see the teamwork that happens in my room. Because the kids say to each other, hey, are you spending time on this? How are you doing? Or when we go down and take our test or practice for DOC, you know, they talk to each other, you know, put your phones away. Let's get serious. You know, we want to do better this time than we did last time. And as a class, I always say we're going from here to here. Look at our growth. We've grown 10% and 10% and 10%. I think that for me, is so rewarding to see them take leadership of their learning and really, you know, be invested in it on their own. And I think so much as the culture thing that we have done such, I feel, a good job as together and then with our students, just talking to them about the importance of this and being a good test taker, and the stakes are high and this is why, and they get so excited, and that's what I think is great.
We have competitions going on in our classes between the classes, and the kids are like, wait a minute, they didn't do better than us. Oh yeah, they did. And it does motivate them, so I think it's good.
This student diagnostic data also guides me in thinking about why do I have so many students who didn't score as well as I would want them to on a particular GLE. And so this is something that is a quick fix. It's a very simple idea that evidently we need to practice more, or we need to study the question the way it was worded on our diagnostic and decide if there was vocabulary in that question that was unknown to the students, because I'm disappointed, but I'm surprised as well that they struggled with this particular idea about the diploid and the haploid number, right? Even though you either got it or you didn't get it, 100% or 0. So this is a guide for me as well in terms of what I need to reteach. So I'd like that. Okay, we are getting ready for our students who are below basic. The students who are below basic. Are there some things that we're doing to bring those below basic students up? How do we support them?
I know one of the things we're doing is we're moving the kids from the back to the front and emphasizing to them how important it is to really focus on getting the material and trying to perform better on the EOCs. So that's helping.
Okay.
I think just practicing our test-taking strategies over and over again, like how to look at a question, how to read it, how to eliminate some answers that you know are not correct, and just kind of help them, because some kids just aren't good test takers because they haven't learned how to be. And so I think just practicing a question a day is helpful.
Right.
I'm doing a lot with calling parents, with making that connection with the relationships and making sure parents know that, you know, this is what's going on in class, this is so important. Because not always, the kids might not always want to tell their parents what's going on. So especially if I have a student that's struggling, I'm always on the phone with their parents to figure out, okay, what can we do next? And I'm also here, I mean, Ms. Shields is here every Tuesday and Thursday, and then I'm here for 5 days a week after school and before school. So those kinds of tutoring are available.
Have you noticed that those students who are the quietest are the ones that, if you're not careful, you can overlook? They're the ones that need to have more attention in terms of, do you have questions? How are you progressing? Because they're shy to ask the questions. I'm trying to really focus on, you know, during classwork time, I'm trying to follow Tavani, and during classwork time when students are working on different things, I'm trying to make a point to visit with those really quiet students the most frequently, to make sure that they are getting their needs met, their questions answered.
And I think what you said about just differentiating your instruction, last year we spent a lot of time on doing this. Bethany and I did, about how to differentiate instruction in your room and how to have your kids that are more high flyers or kids that are really getting it, working on something that's more like independent, like they're doing a virtual lab, they're working with the group on a project. And then you have some time to sit back with the kids that are struggling and really go over those basic concepts with them and say, this is how we get to here, this is how we achieve this, what are you struggling with? I think it's just spending that time one-on-one. So helpful for kids that are really struggling.
Thinking ahead, we're getting ready for our next unit. What kinds of things are we doing to get ready for our next unit? What do we do?
You just made our pretest for us, so we can see where our students are at.
So we use USA Test Prep to create a pretest that we're going to gauge what they know.
Yes.
Okay, everybody's got theirs.
And that's going to be our basis of our data collection for the first part of it.
I thought it was very important to be able to identify the GLEs that are going to be tested in this next unit, because we're under kind of a time crunch in terms of we only have 5 days before we do our next diagnostic. Everybody realizes 1 week before we begin. Okay, and so with that in mind, I thought the pretest will help identify for us the areas that they already know, right? And I don't think we should waste time in the first 5 days on areas that they seem to be fairly competent from. But I think we need to look at the areas that they're totally non-knowledgeable, and they could be simply vocabulary, like abiotic and biotic, for example. So I thought we need to, as a group, kind of plan some activities that we're going to do with them with it in mind, that we want to cover things that they're not as familiar with.
And I think looking at, again, the sheet that was created for us,
Okay.
these are the, you know, two main strands, and we can kind of see from these percentages here what strands our students scored really, really low in. You know, the interactions for predator-prey is
Right.
where they basically bombed out. Well, we hadn't taught them that yet, but it's thinking in a different way, whereas when we're looking at the adaptations, they scored higher on. And I know just teaching about mutations, I talk about adaptation at the same time of a mutation, so they understand, again, that bridge going from one unit to the next, so they had to keep that information going.
So your recommendation is predator-prey would be a good one to start with next
I
week when we
think,
come back?
I think that one there is where they're going to start struggling looking at our data right now.
And they always have that symbiotic relationships is always on the ESG.
Right.
So that's a big one that we really need to hit right away too.
And that is one that I think the students get confused with, the commensalism, mutualism. You know, the parasitism they got down.
Right.
The commensalism
They
and
got
the
that.
mutualism. I think those are a couple of terms.
And there's a great song on YouTube that we played last year, and the kids love it.
Okay.
It really works.
Something you could send to all of us?
Oh yeah, yeah. It's a wonderful song, but it's to like regular music, but all the lyrics are specific for predator-prey relationships and, you know, the symbiotic relationships. So
I know that they, at an EOC workshop that I went to, one of the points was that the students have to hear it, write it, smell it, do it, you know, taste it, touch it, you know, at least 26 times in order to really own that information. And so my concern is, as we're getting closer to the EOC, we need to find ways to repetitively repeat those symbiotic relationships, because I do agree that those are the hard ones for them to remember. Not the parasitism, but you know, the mutualism and the ones that are not in our everyday. We need to find examples.
Look, last year, Miss Mutra and I, we would play a song every day. They would be walking in the room.
And
there was
we
music
might
playing.
do some dancing.
Yeah, but it got them in the room, and they hear the music, so they think it's this other song, and then all of a sudden, no, it's their science lyrics. It's what we're teaching that day.
Okay.
So it got their brains, but when it got into the classroom a little quicker, but it got their brains flowing, and it worked really well.
Okay.
Yeah,
I always like to do review before, like we do our science starter, and as a launching point to go back. And I find that if the more I spend time with the review at the beginning and just simple little remember what this word is, remember what this word is, and like, you know, ask them what is this and what is this. I think that helps, just that daily, you know, going over the terms with the kids have helped.
I have been working really hard in my class on literacy and the writing and incorporating science terms into the writing. And it's a very quick way for me to assess how their thinking is putting the words together, and if they're doing them logically, and if it makes sense. And I can identify misconceptions very quickly from what they're writing. I didn't see, before I started my literacy, as many indicators of what was in their thinking. It's a way to get into their head. So I really encourage you guys to try to get some of these big ideas written down so you can see if they're really understanding it through and being able to communicate it in their writing.
Well, one of the things I just had them do to prepare for their test was their second quiz that we all gave out. I gave it back to them, and I said, I want you guys to restate the question.
Yes.
Tell me the correct answer and why. So you're going to write me 3 sentences for every one that you got wrong. And I will give you an 80 for your grade versus the grade you have.
We did something similar, and I expressed my concern. I battle with, is it busy work or is it a learning activity? And I consulted Mr. Ryerson and asked him how he felt about it, and he was supportive. He said, no, I think that this is a way to identify what the correct answer is and how it would fit in context. So it's a good activity for our students at their level to do that.
And everything we're talking about fits into the literacy objective. So the writing complete
The
sentences.
writing,
So it's
complete
perfect. And I
sentences.
think so many of our topics lend themselves to them being able to write. Like, explain a predator-prey relationship in an ecosystem. Why is it important? I mean, those are things that they can write about that are simple things.
Okay.
But and I know for my students, my 2 students that scored 100%, they both did their study guide and they both did that literacy piece with writing those sentences out to correct their quizzes, and they bombed their quiz. I mean, their quiz was like a 20%. So they went from having a 20% on their last assessment to getting 100% on this one.
I appreciate you supplying me with a study guide because, you know, I have this idea of differentiated instruction. I've got students who are working on their mutations. I have students who are working on one of the activities who ate the cheese. I have students who are done and ready to move on, and a study guide is awesome to get them launched so they can prepare for the test. So thank you for sharing that. That's wonderful. Okay. Anything?
That's